It's the max that I can do.
I'd like to do a little sound test. The picture honestly looks beautiful. And let's do a sound test, like you introduce the situation, or you present yourself and introduce the situation in Ukraine where you are, and so we'll have the sound.
Okay, my name is Fabian Abreu. I'm the spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, here in Ukraine. I am now in a rural zone of the Kherson region. It's an area that, as you can see, is affected by the flooding.
Okay, it's the sound is not great. We can't hear you very well. Would you just have the AirPod? Do you have a microphone or something, or maybe you have a cable with a microphone incorporated? Because we can't hear you very well.
No, I can try to change the connection. Must be a connection thing, because the AirPods don't really work well. Let me try to use other Wi-Fi. It might be a connection issue.
Plus, there's a machine next to you that does this beep.
It's a truck.
It's a truck going backwards or something, and you have this beep. I hope it's. Is there a way that this machine can stop from 10:30 until 45 until you are done?
It's gonna stop right now. They're just approaching with supplies.
Okay, let's do that again. Now it's a bit quieter also around me. Maybe, yeah, okay. Be there and.
Do you want me to try to change the connection first? Or makes no sense? Or it's not a connection.
No, look,
issue?
now the sound is good. So speak a bit longer. Just say whatever cross your mind.
Okay. So my name is Fabian Abreu. I'm the spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs here in Ukraine. I am in the Kherson region. I'm in the rural area of Kherson that has been heavily affected by the war, and now it's also suffering the consequences of the catastrophic flooding that we had here since last week, when the Kakhovka dam was destroyed. Is it better?
It's not optimum, honestly. What options do you have? You say change the connection, the connectivity?
Or switch off the camera. It's really a rural area. I mean, there is not much that I can do here.
Can you say that again, Saviano, please?
It's a rural area. There's not much that we can do here. I can try to switch off the camera. It's the only option that I could.
And you don't have anyone with you that would have a spare headphone with a microphone incorporated with cables? Sometimes it works a bit.
I don't think it's that the problem. I've done it many times. I think it's the internet connection. That's why it's breaking.
Okay.
I did a video right now and I connected without internet, just recording the video, and the sound is perfect. It's internet. You are close to the front line, so it's really internet is really not great in this area.
Yeah, I understand that. Even though the picture, the video is going wonderfully.
Yeah,
it's audio that is more our concern, and I think that you had a cable that would be better.
No, Bluetooth. I really don't. I really cannot stop people from not there. I'm sorry. Let me try to change the connection to see if it improves somehow. 1 second.
What other connections would you have?
Okay, I'm using another internet connection now. I'm using my mobile phone connection. Does it sound better somehow, or it's the same?
It sounds a bit better. Yeah. There's less breakup. Speak more, please.
So my name is. I'm gonna read my lines. So I'm gonna memorize them. My name is Saviano. I am the spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Ukraine. I am one of the rural areas of Kherson, the Kherson region, an area that was already heavily affected by the war, and now it's also suffering the consequences of the catastrophic flooding that we have had here since last week, when the Kakhovka dam was destroyed. We are here today with some assistance. We are with my colleagues from WFP, from UNICEF. IOM just arrived and we bring in life-saving supplies, mainly water and food for people in a small village that is close here. 500 families are there, and they are in a really dramatic situation. We're going there by boats. You can see behind me. I don't think you can see the boat. Ah, they already left. Oh, they left. They left, Tahir? Did they leave already? Oh. Okay.
Okay, Saviano. You
okay.
were
Is it
expecting
better
someone?
or it's the same? Now I thought. No, I was just mentioning the boats behind me, but I realized the boats are not behind me anymore.
So, sorry, I didn't get that. What did you say?
Now I was saying that I mentioned that there are boats behind me, but I just realized that the boats are already left. They are not behind me anymore.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Saviano? So the video is really great. The audio is not optimum. So we will ask you if you can, please, and I know you can, to speak very articulate and loud enough. So short, articulate, and brief, and that should do it. And maybe we'll ask you to repeat sometimes. So don't get too stressed out. Wonderful. Thank you, Saviano. We know it's not easy in those conditions. Dr. Qiuxiang Tai,
Yes,
good
I'm
morning.
here.
I
Good
just
morning.
wanted to do a quick sound check with you, please.
So, can you hear me?
Can you just introduce yourself? Just say one sentence briefly.
Okay. My name is Qiuxiang Tai. I'm a technical officer from the WHO Department of Health Product Standards and Policy.
That's fine. Wonderful. Thank you so much. You're good.
Thank you.
Dimitris, good morning. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Good morning, Dimitris. Just wanted to do a quick sound check with you as well.
Okay. Does I sound good?
Yeah, just if you can say one sentence about, you know, the shipwreck in Greece.
Okay. As you already, everybody knows, we have this incident close to the coast of Greece.
Dimitris, sorry, I'm interrupting you because the sound is not good.
Yes.
Could you please, do you have a headphone with a microphone incorporated you could use, please?
I will try to do this. Just a moment. Can you hear me now?
Okay, can you do again,
Yeah.
say your sentence?
Yes, yes, of course. If I'm okay now, we had this incident close to the coast of the western part of Greece on Wednesday, and we have many people trying to travel from Libya to Italy who have suffered the experience of drowning event with
It's better, but
ship.
sorry to interrupt. It's better, but if could you get closer to your router, your Wi-Fi router, because I
Okay,
think sometimes.
Okay. I'll try to do this also. Give me a moment.
Or if you can plug in, if you have an RG45 and you can plug in your laptop into your router.
I don't have this facility now. I'm on Wi-Fi.
Okay, can you get closer to the?
Yes, I will do this.
Fiber?
Yes, I'm trying to do this in order to have a better signal.
Thank you.
Okay. Is it getting any better?
We notice it when you speak, a long sentence. At the beginning it goes well, but at some point it can break up. So that's why I wanted to do a proper test, and if you can speak longer.
Okay. I don't know if it's better now.
Talking, please.
If the connection is correct, and I'll try to explain the situation of the people who have suffered the experience of this drowning event last few days.
Thank you, Dimitris. Let's try to go like this. And if you want to untangle the wire on your headphone, you have time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
A very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us at this press briefing at the UN office at Geneva today, the 16th of June. Another very dense program. We have a number of news items, announcements. We'll start immediately with our colleague from the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, who joins us from the Kherson region in Ukraine, Saviano Abreu, as you know, the head of communications for OCHA in Ukraine. He has an update on the response to the Kakova Dam destruction. Saviano, over to you.
Thanks, Rolando. Yes, I'm here in the rural area of the Kherson region. We came here today with the colleagues from WFP and from UNICEF to support people from a small village that's here, 500 families more or less here in this small village, facing a dramatic situation, not only because of the flooding, but this village was already affected by the war before the flooding started last week. We are using boats here today. You can see it behind me. The river was the fastest option. Rolando, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We hear you. You're coming in okay. There's background noise, though. Maybe somebody near you, if you can have them maybe move forward.
Can you stop the radio? I'm live now. Yeah, please.
Thank you.
That side, please. Sorry, we are in the middle of the operation, so you can imagine that the situation is not ideal. But yes, as I was mentioned, we are using today 4 boats to deliver assistance to these 500 families, a small community that is here close here where I am now. This community, they already have been facing the consequence of the war. This area was before under Russian control. Late last year, around November, it was retaken by Ukraine, and now they are facing this new catastrophe with the flooding here. So we bring in today life-saving water and food is the main needs of the population here in this area. And this is not our only convoy today. We also have another one to the Dnipro region. As you might already know, the situation with the destruction of the dam is not affecting here in the Kherson region with the flooding, but also causing a green situation now for people in other parts of Ukraine, mainly in the Dnipro region, because they are facing severe water shortage there. Our calculation is that 200,000 people in the Dnipro region, for example, they have already been cut off from water from their houses. But the number of families, of people that could face this same situation goes up to more than 700,000 people, because these were the people that would be, that the reservoir would be the source of drinking water around southern Ukraine, not only here in the Kherson region. The flood waters are receding, according to our colleagues from UNOSAT, from 600 kilometers square in the first days of the disaster. Now we have less than 200 kilometers square of flooding. It's visible here in the Kherson region. In the city of Kherson, it's visible that the water level is receding, but doesn't mean at all that is the end of the disaster, because the long-term consequences, as we all know, is going to just start now. So I think, Roland, I'm going to leave it here. And if colleagues have any question, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Saviano. We do have a question. We have Yuri from RIA Novosti. Yuri, go ahead.
Yes, and thank you for this opportunity. Could you go in the other side of the blank? I mean, in the Russian under Russian control sides, or you can be only in the Ukrainian side? And if yes, why can't you do in the other side? Thank you.
Yeah, it's actually a very good question, and thanks for that. As we have been saying repeatedly, and the humanitarian coordinator Denise Brown even put a statement earlier this week, we have been requesting access and guarantees of safety from the Russian Federation to cross the front line, to cross the river and provide assistance on the other side. But we are yet to receive this kind of assurances. And that's why our response so far is only on the areas controlled by Ukraine. This is not a new development either. Since the escalation of the war in February 2022, we have requested the same kind of access from the Russian Federation. And since then, we could not cross the front line with a single truck of assistance. That's why our assistance on the other side of the front line is really limited. It doesn't mean that we don't have activities there. We have activities in the areas controlled by Russia, but it's not at a scale, it's not meeting the needs of people there.
Thank you very much, Saviano. Further questions for Saviano?
Yes, it's just a follow-up.
Follow-up, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to understand, because you are saying that you request access and in the Russian Federation didn't give you the guarantees you need. But so does that mean that they say, no, you can't cross? Or does that mean that they are saying that you can cross, but only in these conditions, and these conditions are not enough for the UN? And who in Russia is saying, if someone is saying no, who is saying no, clearly?
Look, these are negotiations that is still ongoing. The Russian Federation, we are in touch with different levels, at the most highest levels, at operational levels, but we are still in negotiations. We are still trying to cross, so to avoid jeopardizing any part of the process, because our main duty here is to support the people that need assistance. I'm not going to enter into the details on how the Russian Federation is responding now. I can say that in previous moments, we received no from the Russian Federation repeated times. Sometimes they only acknowledge the receipt of our request. It's not enough. It doesn't provide the safety guarantees. But in this specific operation now, I prefer to not enter into the details until, as it is still ongoing.
Thank you very much, Saviano. Do we have further questions for Saviano? No, I don't see that's the case. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us, particularly. Oh, Gabrielle, Reuters, sorry. Gabrielle of Reuters, over to you.
Thank you, Rolando, and thank you, Saviano. Just a quick question. You say the waters are receding, and we know that there are concerns about mines in the area. Is that something that you've sort of witnessed on the ground? Are there any concerns related to that right now that the waters have begun to recede? Thank you.
Thank you. I think the UMAS colleagues connection there maybe can complement, but yes, it's a huge concern for us here in Ukraine, because this area, Ukraine is one of the most mine-contaminated countries in the world. We already know that. And here in the southern part of the country is one of the main issues, is the reasons why, for example, agriculture in Kherson, in Mykolaiv, in Zaporizhzhia, and had been impacted because of the mine contamination. So the floodwater is moving the mines, is a reality. Also, when the floods recede, the sediments of the flooding can also cover the mines, making the demining process much more difficult. And we are working with the government, we are working with the emergency services to provide them with mapping of what it was before of the flooding, and of course we're going to provide support to the government on the way forward. But it is a concern. Accidents here were already too common. Dozens of mine accidents every month here in the Kherson region, the neighboring Mykolaiv region as well. So of course, something that we have to take care of and work with the government to ensure the safety of civilians, but also the safety of humanitarians working here.
Thank you so much, Saviano. In fact, Gabrielle, and colleagues, one of our briefers today is Abigail Hartley, next to me now, Chief of Policy, Advocacy, and Donor Relations of the UN Mine Action Service. She can add one point on this particular question.
Thank you, and thank you to my colleague in OCHA who's given you a very clear and good overview of the situation. It is true that mines can be moved by water, usually when the water is moving fast enough to actually move the mines from where they've been buried before. As my colleague said, when the waters subside, the mines are there. Good thing is that mines float, so they do stay on the surface, but of course there's a lot of other flood debris, and they can get buried in sediment. So it is a challenge that adds to the already awful situation there, but the Ukrainian state services have done a good job of demining so far in the Ukraine, and we wish them good speed in this latest challenge that they have.
Thanks very much, Abigail, for adding those points. Do we have questions, further questions for Saviano or perhaps Abigail? Okay, if you can stay here. Nina from AFP.
Sorry. Are there any indications of casualties from the mines that you've seen, and how concerned are you about those casualties? Thank you.
So if the question is for me,
Yeah.
No, I don't have information about casualty data in Ukraine or related to this. I do want to say that Paul Heslop, who is the UNDP, the lead agency for mine action in Ukraine, and Paul Heslop, who is the chief technical advisor for Ukraine, is coming to Geneva on Sunday. And I would be able to link you up with him, and he would be able to talk much more specifically about details, facts and figures from Ukraine.
That would be most helpful. Thank you, Abigail. Saviano, I don't believe you have anything, or do you have anything to add on this point?
No. Just reiterate that the mine accidents were already a reality here before. So we used to have dozens of accidents here in this region. Also in the Kharkiv region, it's quite common recently. I don't have in hand also any numbers. We also don't have verification from our side, but it's just to give a picture that it was already an issue here. And of course, we are working with the government to support them, as Abigail mentioned, but it is a reality that we cannot forget at all.
Thank you so very much, Saviano, and of course, Abigail. If you can stay with us, I know you have another item to brief on. Good luck to you, Saviano, in this difficult circumstance. We're going to, maybe before we go to you, Abigail, we're going to shift to Sudan. We have a colleague waiting on the line from Port Sudan. We have Abdi Rahman Mayag, who's World Food Programme Sudan Country Director, who has an update on WFP pushes into new areas as emergency operations expand. Yes, Abdi Rahman, over to you.
Greetings from Port Sudan. This is Abdurrahman Meigag. Thanks, Ronaldo. WFP continues to scale up its operations across Sudan and has so far provided emergency food assistance and nutrition support to over 1 million people in 14 out of the 18 states since resuming operations on 3rd of May. WFP is expanding to support to 5.9 million people across Sudan over the next 6 months. Last weekend, WFP provided vital nutrition assistance to children who were evacuated from the Maigoma orphanage in Khartoum, where dozens of children tragically died in the early weeks of the conflict. WFP also distributed emergency food to 300 children and their caretakers who are moved to safety in Wad Medani, Jazeera State. In Khartoum State, WFP continues its food distributions and completed distributions for a further 24,000 residents in Karari locality, northeast of Durman. A total of 54,000 people who are trapped by the fighting in the Khartoum metropolitan area have received support. WFP plans to support 500,000 people in the Khartoum state, and distributions will continue in Karari and other locations as and when security permits. WFP is also rapidly scaling up to support civilians who are fleeing Khartoum by the day and are arriving with little or nothing in Wadi Medani, Jazeera State, and various towns across River Nile and northern state. WFP completed emergency food distributions for 32,000 people in Shendi, River Nile State, and for 8,000 people in Wadi Halfa, northern state on the Egyptian border. Distribution is in Accra, El Matama, and Berber, all in River Nile State and Jazeera, are ongoing, and plans to distribute aid in Marawe and Dongola in northern state are underway. In the Darfurs, WFP has provided food aid and nutrition supplements to over 375,000 people in South, North, Central, and Eastern Darfur since resumption of our operations on 3rd May. There have been some breakthroughs in access, particularly in Darfur, where we have distributed food to 16,500 people in hard-to-reach areas in Shangel, Tobiah, and Shaddad, North Darfur. We're also looking at cross-border access to Western Darfur from Chad to address the needs of vulnerable people as a result of the conflict. Plans are underway to test the corridor from Kosti to White Nile to Nayala in South Darfur State. The first cross-border movement of commodities from Egypt to Sudan has been a success, as we have received 3 trucks last night that has crossed Egypt. This is another corridor that the humanitarian will also use for future. WFP is also providing emergency telecommunication services to all United Nations agencies and the wider humanitarian community in Sudan, where basic connectivity is challenging. The rapidly deteriorating security situation and attacks on aid is making it extremely challenging for WFP to support vulnerable families affected by the conflict. WFP appeals to both parties to the conflict to immediately stop the fighting and facilitate the safe delivery of humanitarian assistance. WFP assistance, assets, and premises have been repeatedly attacked and looted. Over 40,000 tons of food have been stolen and looted. That is around 1/3 of the total stocks WFP had in the country before the conflict. The total value of losses so far stands at over $89 million, which includes food, equipment, and assets. WFP is extremely concerned that the conflict could undermine the current planting season as farmers face insecurity and struggle to cope with soaring prices of fertilizers and seeds. The planting season for sorghum, one of the Sudanese main cereal crops, is expected to start in June. High costs of seeds and fertilizers and limited availability of cash and financing could lead to a below average harvest season in September. WFP requires $407 million through the rest of the year to scale up operations and reach 5.9 million people. An estimated 2 to 2.5 million people in Sudan are expected to slip into hunger in the coming months because of the ongoing violence. This would take acute food insecurity in Sudan to record levels, with more than 19 million people affected, which is 40% of the population. Thank you, Ronaldo, and over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Megag. We have a couple of questions for you, starting with Peter Kenny of All Africa Media. Peter?
Yeah, thanks for this briefing, Mr. Megag. I was just wondering, in how many states of Sudan is WFP providing support? And apart from Khartoum and Darfur, where are the needs the most serious? Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Megag.
We are now reaching 14 states out of the 18 states in Sudan. Darfur, obviously, is the most complex and most deteriorating regions in the country. The fighting between the two parties only are not taking place in Darfur, but the tribal and ethnic dimensions are also taking place in Darfur, Kurdistan, and Blue Nile. So these are areas that really been affected and will deteriorate further if there are no delivery of assistance and there's no security. Over to you.
Thank you. We have a question now from Catherine Fiancon of France 24. Catherine.
Good morning, Rolando, and thank you to Mr. Megag for his briefing. I'd like just to come back on the figures. The last one he mentioned was $407 million, 407 for the rest of the year. Could you please tell us what the rest of the year is? Is it from June till December? And is it correct that it will reach 5.9 million people? Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. In order to reach the target of 5.9 million people, we require 407 million for the remainder of the year, till end of the year, talking about June end to December. So for the remainder of the year, this is the amount of money we want to reach 5.9 million. Over to you.
Thanks for that clarification. John Zarakostas.
Yes, good morning, sir. I was wondering if you can bring us up to speed on what the World Food Programme is doing to deploy food for refugees that have fled Sudan into neighboring countries like Chad. The conditions from what we're hearing on the ground are appalling in these camps. And some of the officials are saying that they expect the number of refugees from Sudan into Chad, for instance, to double in the next few weeks.
That's an excellent question. Honestly, the fighting and the crisis in Sudan has got strong dimensions regionally. And we know that more than 150,000 people crossing the border from Western Chad, from Western Darfur to Chad. And obviously the need is tremendous there. With the continuous fighting in West Darfur and in Darfur, we expect more refugees to cross the border. So obviously the need is there, and we are appealing to international community, not only be providing assistance to inside Darfur, but also to the neighboring countries like Chad. So obviously the details of the numbers and requirements could be, we could get it from WFP Chad, but we know that there is an urgent need of support. It's just increasing day in and day out. Over to you.
Thank you again. Lisa Schlein, Voice of America.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I'd like, first, if you would please be so kind as to send your notes like right away, because they're very important for our reporting.
Yeah, I believe Ishita said that she will be sending those notes, Lisa. She'll send those notes shortly.
Excellent. I actually do have a question following that. What is the current nutritional status in the country? If you have figures on malnutrition rates, how many children are involved, and your fears about how many children are at risk of dying because they are not getting the food that they need, nor apparently the special nutritional feeding that would be needed in order to make them healthier and to prevent this death. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's an important question. Obviously, the situation is deteriorating day in, and the number of people being affected are increasing, and those are being affected mostly are children. Assessments are always continue as the new displacement takes place. It is estimated more than 2 million people will be affected nutritionally, more than 4 million people suffering from acute malnutrition in the country. So obviously we will provide the details of the nutritional situation, but what we know is already 4 million people are already suffering from acute malnutrition. And if the situation continues, that number will increase. Obviously, over to you.
Thank you very much. Gorgi Ndoye. Go ahead, Gorgi.
Alors, c'est moi. Okay, bonjour. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Sir, from Sudan. My name is Gorgi. I'm a Senegalese journalist for Le Soleil and Continent Premier. Regarding this dire threat situation you shown us, I would like to know if you have been contacted by Mr. George Clooney, who've been very well interested about situation in Sudan and worked so hard before it has been divided into nations. Thank you.
Did you get the question? He was asking about George Clooney, actually, if you've been in touch with him. If you had a response to that, I can tell you that Mr. Clooney has been very much involved in the activities of the UN in Sudan, in Darfur, in fact, since the conflict first erupted over a decade ago. But I don't know if you have something to add, Mr. Megag.
Thank you. We haven't been contacted by George Clooney yet, but we welcome any celebrity or anyone who could really help us and help the international community, humanitarian community in the country to basically enlighten the world about the current situation that are taking place in Sudan. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And of course, we would echo those sentiments. Any principal advocate on such dire situations are very much needed. Any further questions for Mr. Megag on this issue? I don't see that's the case. So thank you so very much for joining us from Port Sudan, Mr. Megag. We're going to stay on Sudan. We have Jeremy Lawrence of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, who has an update on the killing of a governor in Darfur. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Rollo, and good morning, everyone. The High Commissioner is appalled by the killing of the governor of West Darfur, Khamis Abdallah Abakar, on the 14th of June, just hours after he was arrested by the rapid support forces in El Geneina, capital of West Darfur, where the conflict has taken on an ethnic dimension, with the Rizagat Arab militias and other allied militias backed by the RSF targeting the Masalit community. The killing of the governor, who was himself a Masalit, came just hours after he had criticised the RSF in a TV interview over ongoing attacks by RSF mobilised Arab militias against the Masalit and critical infrastructure in El Geneina, a situation he described as beyond description. All those responsible for this killing must be held to account, including those who bear command responsibility. Alongside liability of the direct perpetrator, Governor Abakar was in the RSF's custody, and it was the RSF's responsibility to keep him safe. His killing was the second high-profile killing in El Geneina in a matter of days after the older brother of the traditional chief of the Masalit, Tariq Abdelrahman Barelden, was killed. We are also deeply concerned by the rise in hate speech in West Darfur, as it could further inflame tensions. Our office has reviewed video clips recorded by members of the Arab militia boasting about their victories. One video appears to show a militia member walking in an empty street saying, now in Al-Thawra neighbourhood, the killing of the Nuba has been successfully accomplished. The expulsion of the Masalit has been successfully accomplished. Sons of dogs. We call for justice and accountability for extrajudicial killings and all other violations and abuses that have occurred during this ongoing conflict. We also appeal for the immediate cessation of hostilities in El Geneina and throughout Sudan, and the immediate establishment of a humanitarian corridor between Chad and El Geneina, as well as safe passage for civilians out of all conflict areas. El Geneina has been under large-scale and repeated attacks by RSF and allied fighters since the 24th of April. They have targeted districts inhabited by the Masalit, preventing the movement of people, goods, and humanitarian aid, and destroying essential infrastructure. All this amid a communications blackout since at least the 19th of May. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. And I just take this opportunity to draw your attention, remind you of the statements that we issued earlier this week. One on behalf of the UN Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan, UNITAMS, on the killing of the governor in West Darfur, Mr. Khamis Abdullah Abakar, through which they strongly condemn this heinous act. And they called on the perpetrators to be swiftly brought to justice and for the cycle of violence in the region to expand no further. And this was preceded somewhat of an eerie premonition the day before by through a statement of the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who expressed his deep concern about the situation in Darfur, including the large-scale violence in El Geneina, as well as other areas in the region. And through his statement, the SG reaffirmed the United Nations commitment to supporting the Sudanese people. Those two statements you have at your disposal. Questions on Sudan for Jeremy? I don't see that's the case, so thank you very much. And Jeremy, if you can stay here, I know you have two other items. Before we go back to you, let's turn now to Abigail, who has an announcement. One moment. Pardon me. Sorry, Gorgi. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead, Gorgi, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Rolando. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so question is, your colleague, I don't know who he is, his argument is based on ethnicities. I would like to know if the current situation in Sudan is being built only by ethnicities. Thank you.
Listen, it's not only built on ethnicities. There's Thanks, Gorga. Yes, it's as you know, it's a complicated matter. We have drawn your attention to the ethnic dimension to this, which of course is of grave concern for our office and more broadly the UN. So, as I stated at the beginning, there are other issues at stake here. So I think I can leave it at that.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, if you can stay with us, we will now go back to Abigail for an announcement to UNMAS.
Thank you very much, Rolando. I'm here to pique your interest, hopefully, in coverage of two related and important meetings that are happening at the WMO this coming week. So from Monday to Wednesday, there will be the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention intersessional meetings, which will take place under the presidency of Germany. The meeting will gather thematic committees on clearance, victim assistance, cooperation assistance, and treaty compliance. And Ambassador Goebel will update on universalization efforts and plans, and also the destruction of stockpiles. So the delegates to that meeting will reflect on achievements. They will be assessing how the Oslo Action Plan is being implemented. We'll be looking at areas that need increased attention ahead of the 21st meeting of states parties that will take place in November. In the second half of the week, so on the Thursday and Friday, we will be holding the 26th International Meeting of Mine Action National Directors and United Nations Advisors, which is abbreviated to the NDM-UN meeting, also at the WMO. So this meeting brings together affected states, UN advisors, UN partners, NGOs, and other organizations to exchange ideas and address challenges in the mine action sector. The overarching theme of that meeting is mine action cannot wait, underscoring the urgency of our work. There will be an opening ceremony that will include remarks from the Deputy State Secretary of Switzerland, Mr. Thomas Gerber, also Director General Valavaya from UNOG, and the Secretary General's Special Advisor on Solutions to Internal Displacement, Mr. Robert Piper. During the 2 days of the meeting, topics that will be addressed will be durable solutions for displaced persons, mine action and the environment, care for survivors of explosive ordnance accidents, and innovations in mine action. So I hope that there would be something of interest to many of you in that meeting. Because of the popularity of the meeting and also restrictions in capacity of the WMO, we can't have all of the media there all of the time. But if you would like to cover the opening ceremony or any of those sessions, then my colleague Larissa Kirianova can help you with access to the building. I also just wanted to say that UNMAS Communications Officer Lee Woodyear will be in Geneva all of next week, and he would be able to contact you with national directors from Sudan, from Ukraine, from Angola to Cambodia to Mozambique, any country that you may have an interest in. We have people, either the national authority or NGOs from those countries. And I believe that UNOG has a detailed overview of the people that will be there and also the themes of the meeting. As well as those opportunities, here on Wednesday, the 21st of June, there will be a press briefing from 10:30 to 11:30. And the speakers there will be Eileen Cohn, she's the director of UNMAS, Ambassador Toscano, who is the director of the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining. Also of interest, Giles Dooley, who is the Secretary General's global advocate for persons with disabilities in conflict and peace building situations. And he has recently been in Ukraine for, well, I think like about 4 months, Larissa, anyway, a significant amount of time working with people with disabilities in Ukraine. I think he would have really interesting things to talk and share with you. Also, Marianne Monroe, she's from Colombia. The government of Colombia's response to mine action in that country. And then, as I mentioned, Paul Heslop, he's the UNDP mine action lead in Ukraine. So those, the panel will be full of those more interesting people than me next Wednesday. So I really hope that you would be interested in that. So I warmly invite you, encourage you. We would really appreciate your advocacy for mine action during next week. Thank you. Thank you, Rolando.
Thank you, Abigail. We have a couple of questions for you. John Zarakostas, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I was wondering, firstly, if your conference will be webcast, and secondly, if we can have the material sent in advance to the press corps. I'm particularly interested in the list of participants that will be attending and also the background documents. And I was wondering, what is the situation with Afghanistan? Will you have representatives from Afghanistan attending? What is the situation with demining in Afghanistan post September 2021?
Thank you very much for the question. First, on webcast, no, it will not be webcast, but all of the sessions will be recorded and will be uploaded, to the NDMUN link, which I can share through this office, and also through Rolando's office can share all of the things that you asked for in terms of participant list and themes, etc. Afghanistan have not registered to participate in the meeting. I myself was there in January, and I can say the biggest obstacle to demining there is a lack of resources from the international community. The program 10 years ago had 10,000 deminers. Now there's maybe 3,000. The interesting thing since the change in the regime is that security has drastically improved. So on the one hand, the mine action community have the opportunity to travel and carry out operations in areas that have been neglected for a decade. And the sad thing is that because of the situation there, we don't have the finances to be able to make the most of that opportunity. And I think that's hopefully answers your question about Afghanistan.
Thank you very much. Catherine, François Cat.
Yes, if I may, John has a follow-up.
John, did you have a follow-up on that? See a few more hands coming up.
Go ahead, John. Yes, I did. I was just interested to know if your conference will only look at anti-personnel, or would it also capture clusters and other ordinances? And secondly, I'm very much interested on how much of your funding goes for victims of anti-personnel mines. Traditionally, it's been an appallingly low figure.
Thank you very much. So the first week, the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, the first meeting, which is Monday to Wednesday, that will focus only on anti-personnel mines. The second 2 days, the National Directors meeting, we look at explosive ordnance writ large, IEDs, UXO, anti-tank, anti-personnel mines, clusters, the whole 9 yards. Your question about victim assistance, yes, unfortunately, about 4% of the total contributions to mine action. Unfortunately, that is the lower, a low proportion that goes to victim assistance. And with you, we are constantly advocating for an increase in that. And thank you if you highlight that somewhere.
Indeed, thank you so much. We do have a couple more. So Catherine, back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Abigail, for being at the briefing. Very interesting. Could you be kind enough also to share with us, maybe in the chat, your contact details so we can reach out, and also the contact details of the gentleman who is in charge of communication, Lee, you mentioned. That would be very helpful also. And regarding the national directors, I suppose that you're going to share the list with Eunice. And so when we want to reach out with certain national directors, how are we supposed to proceed? As if I understood well, we're not allowed to go to be in the room or around the rooms. And if you could also, if I understood well too, there's a press conf scheduled for next Thursday. Will the participants be in person in the room, and will we? Okay, so I think that's it for the moment. Thank you, Abigail.
Thank you very much, and I'm so delighted that you are enthused to know how you can get in. My comment about not being able to come to the WMO, we're expecting that the opening ceremony will probably be the one where lots of people come, and then maybe less people as the week goes on. So for sure, my colleagues at UNOG will have Lee and Larissa's contact details, and they would be able to connect you with any of the national directors that you want to meet. And you would probably be able to meet them on the premises. I'm sure you have access to the WMO, or we can arrange it. So it would be to go through UNOG and Lee and Larissa, and we will share their emails and mine. Just to emphasize the press briefing that you mentioned, they will all be in person, flesh and blood on this podium. And it's Wednesday, not Thursday, but I'm sure that would be in the program.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed. We will, that is, Eunice will share these details, contact details, and all the information we get from Abigail and her colleagues. So thank you very much. We still have, sorry, Catherine, is this a follow-up to your questions before we go back to?
Yeah, just Wednesday at what time is the briefing? And also, you have a new director, Madame Eileen. I don't know if I pronounce it well, Eileen Cohn. When has she been appointed?
So when was she appointed? She doesn't feel very new. I think she must have been here for, I don't know, 5 years. She was the deputy for a while. So forgive me for not really quite remembering when she went from deputy to being the director. But I can find out, or I'm sure it's actually probably on our website. There's a page dedicated to her. But she will be here at the press conference, and you did pronounce her name right. And there was another thing that you just asked.
I just forgot.
What was the first thing, Catherine? Sorry.
Oh, the time of the press.
10:30 to 11:30. 10:30 till 11.
It's okay. And about when she took office, in fact, with the pandemic. I mean, I'll check on the website because
actually, that's making you. Agnes left in July. Agnes left in July of I'm trying to think of the pandemic, 2020, I think. But you can check the website for specific details.
Yep, I'm sure you can find all the relevant information. Thank you. Jan-Dirk Herberman, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
We do. Okay,
great. I've missed the first part of your briefing, so maybe you've mentioned that already. There have been reports by NGOs like Human Rights Watch that the Ukraine, who's a member of the convention, have used APMs. And I know that the president has been quite concerned about these alleged users. So how will this feature next week at the session? And if substantiated, what kind of consequences would there be for the Ukrainians as a member state using APM? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, you're right. So the Human Rights did issue a report on landmine use in Ukraine, in which they allege that Russian forces have used at least 13 types of AP mines, and Ukrainian forces have repeatedly used rocket-launched anti-personnel mines. So the international campaign to ban landmines and the Cluster Munition Coalition has asked, and they will be asking states parties in the mine ban meeting at the beginning of the week to urge Ukraine to investigate this use of AP mines, to report on this in a transparent manner, to secure their remaining stockpiles of AP mines, and to ensure these are not used again, and that the treaty is fully respected. And so that is the first part of the process, to bring to bear the responsibilities of states parties. And the next steps would depend on Ukraine's response to this first request. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. I think we've exhausted all the questions for you, so thank you very much and good luck next week.
Thank you very much, Roland, and everybody.
Of course. Now we move to Cambodia, staying with Jeremy on the podium here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rollo. I believe you should have all received now the High Commissioner's statement on Cambodia. I'll read you out now an abridged version of that. The UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, has today urged the Cambodian government to act swiftly to enable and protect a conducive environment for a free and fair general election next month, saying he is deeply concerned by the curtailing of civic space ahead of the poll. He says ahead of the election, there must be an open and pluralistic environment that guarantees the rights to freedom of expression and opinion, and freedom of assembly and association. These elements lie at the core of an open and free society, as envisaged by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The National Election Commission earlier this year disqualified the Candlelight Party and the Khmer United Great Nation Party from running for election, while long prison sentences had been handed down against other opposition figures. Heavy fines have also been imposed on other political actors. And this week, the Prime Minister said the government would amend the election law to bar anyone who boycotts the vote or encourages others to do so from running as a candidate in future elections. Such an amendment, if enacted, will constitute an overbroad restriction on the right to freedom of expression and a breach of the right of all citizens to stand for election, guaranteed by the Constitution of Cambodia and international human rights instruments. Human rights defenders, trade unionists, and political activists reportedly face legal sanctions for having exercised their rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, or association protected by international human rights instruments, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights ratified by Cambodia in 1992. The High Commissioner says the Paris Peace Agreement and international human rights treaties are the guarantors of peace, prosperity, and a better future for Cambodia. He urges Cambodia's leadership to change course now to enable a vibrant civil society, a space for open debate, and respect for human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Questions on Cambodia for Jeremy? No, I don't see that's the case. So thank you very much. We'll stay with you, but we will move countries. We are actually now going to speak about the situation in Greece, the tragic situation in Greece, the shipwreck specifically in front of Greece. So we'll start maybe with Jeremy, who's got an update, and then we have colleagues on the line from the International Federation of the Red Cross, colleague from Greece and a colleague from Hungary who will also give an update. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you. The appalling loss of life in the Mediterranean Sea was an horrific tragedy, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has said today. The High Commissioner expressed his condolences to those who have lost loved ones. 78 people are known to have died and up to 500 are missing. Among them, large numbers of women and children. He stressed his solidarity with the survivors and the families of the victims. What happened on Wednesday underscores the need to investigate people smugglers and human traffickers and ensure they are brought to justice. The High Commissioner reiterated his call to states to open up more regular migration channels, enhance responsibility sharing, ensure arrangements for the safe and timely disembarkation of all people rescued at sea, and the establishment of independent monitoring and oversight of migration-related policies and practices.
Thank you, Jeremy. We will, before we're taking questions, we'll hear from our colleague in Greece, Mr. Dimitris Chaliotis, who's a Hellenic Red Cross volunteer who was part of the rescue operations, and he joins us from Greece. And then we will hear from Jesse Thompson, IFRC's head of delegation in Greece. Over to you, Mr. Chaliotis.
Good afternoon to everybody. As you already heard, the numbers of this devastating wreck were really high. Many people lost their lives, and many are missing in this wreck. We, as Red Cross, we had received the persons who survived this wreck at the very first moment and tried to provide them first aid and psychological support in this event. Unfortunately, these people were really in shock and really in a very bad condition. And the problem is that this was not the only case in the area. We often face these situations, and we had to provide first aid and assistance to all these immigrants who travel from Northern Africa to Europe. It is a really devastating situation, and it is a really common situation in our place to deal with these people who suffer all these experiences.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn to Jesse Thompson from Hungary, IFRC's head of delegation in Greece. Over to you.
Good morning. As we've heard, hundreds of people around the world are really in deep sorrow and distress because of this tragedy. Hearing that their son or cousin or sister died, or having no idea if their loved one was even on the boat or if he or she is alive. They might have been on the boat themselves. And as we heard from Dimitri, in deep shock of the terrible tragedy that they've survived. As the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies, we are deeply saddened by this tragic event. And we really do send our most sincere condolences to the victims, to their loved ones, and to everyone affected. As Dimitri said, this is one of many incidents like this that we've seen in Greece in the recent months and years. As we heard from my dear colleague at the Hellenic Red Cross, they have been on the scene from the very first moment, and the Hellenic Red Cross has been assisting the survivors of the shipwreck. Their Samaritan rescuers, their specialized nursing staff, and other volunteers from the branch in the region have been on the ground from the very, very first moments, providing aid, relief support, food, and psychological support. With so many people searching for loved ones, the Hellenic Red Cross is also helping to connect those in search of missing loved ones and to help those survivors find their loved ones and reconnect. We are standing in solidarity with the Hellenic Red Cross, and we are standing by wherever we can if support is needed. When such a tragedy takes place, we can't deny that action is needed. We cannot turn a blind eye to this tragedy and the tragedy of avoidable deaths at sea. Since 2014, the Central Mediterranean has become the deadliest migratory route at sea, with 26,000 lives lost, and we know that the number is likely much, much higher. As the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, our priority is providing life-saving assistance and protection to migrants in distress, regardless of their migratory status. Through our partnership with the SOS Méditerranée, this includes humanitarian service points and humanitarian services to people rescued by the Ocean Viking in the Central Mediterranean. Since the beginning of this operation, more than 3,500 people have been rescued. More than 1,100 of those are children. But this is just a drop in the ocean. We need urgent action to prevent these tragedies, People who seek protection should be able to reach it in safety and with dignity. We must establish safe pathways for those in search of protection, and we call on states to establish and facilitate and coordinate search and rescue operations in the Mediterranean Sea, and to cooperate with each other to ensure appropriate and meaningful support for survivors. Tragedies such as this devastating shipwreck in Greece are preventable, and we must do everything in our power to respond. We thank the Hellenic Red Cross for their solidarity and for never wavering in their support to people in need and to migrants in need of protection and assistance.
Thank you very much, Jesse, and to you, Dimitris, and of course, Jeremy here. We have a couple of questions for you. We'll start with Mohammed from the Anadolu News Agency of Turkey. And if you could kindly indicate who your question is directed to. Mohammed, over to you.
Thank you, Rolando. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. My question to Jeremy. Yesterday night, Frontex said that they detected the capsized fishing boat and carrying migrants and reported it to Greek local authorities. Do you think that there is any negligence of Greece in this case? And my second question, short one, it was claimed that the Greek Coast Guard teams tried to push the fishing boat into the Italian waters. What would you like to say about these two short questions? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for your question. Listen, it's still relatively early days in the way the events are unfolding here, so it would be premature to point the finger at anyone or apportion blame. Obviously, there needs to be a thorough investigation into the events that unfolded during the course of this tragedy, and hopefully we can come up with some answers and learn from the experience.
Thank you. We have Nina of AFP in the room here. Go ahead, Nina.
Thank you. I was sort of along the same lines. I was wondering if you have more information about whether a call of distress went out about the reaction of the authorities in this case. And you're calling for a thorough investigation. Do you think that should be done nationally, or is this something that it should be looked at internationally? Thank you.
So just to repeat more or less what I'd said earlier, that I just don't think we have the full, we know to the full extent what actually transpired. Like you, I've read the reports, and there are many, many reports on what has happened. Suffice to say that it's an absolute tragedy that so many lives have been lost. And I think probably the estimates, the 78 that I mentioned, are probably a gross underestimate. And like you, I've read about the 100, possibly up to 100 children being in the hold. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, and only time and a thorough review of what has happened will provide answers to that.
Thanks, Jeremy. John Zarkostas.
Yes, good morning. My question is first to the representative of the Hellenic Red Cross. I was wondering, sir, can you hear me there?
Yes,
Hello?
Go ahead, John.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you give us some details on the early triages? What were the symptoms of the survivors? Was it, besides hypothermia, also a big shock? And what sort of treatment have you given these people? And have they been taken to other facilities from Kalamata? And I have a follow-up question to perhaps the representative of IOM and to Jeremy as well. Thanks.
Okay, Dimitris, if you could, did you hear the question okay?
Yes, I hear the question.
Okay,
there were many
please.
people. Yes, there were many people on this wreck that have been affected from the exposure to the weather conditions. There were many days ship traveling, and there were some sunburns on the skin, and there were hydration because they were not supplied properly with water. And moreover, there were some cases of drowning symptoms due to the wreck situation that happened. So many of these people have, among other symptoms, this kind of symptoms I just mentioned. Many of them have been sent to the hospital for better treatment where they were needed for intensive care. And some of them have already still been in the hospital. 27 of them are still in the hospital for more care in their problems. The rest of them, the people, are in good shape right now, and we have treated them well, and they have been able to move with at the next step of the procedure that they are going to experience.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. John, you had a question for IOM.
Yeah,
Paul is on the line, so maybe go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question for Paul and also for Jeremy. Both of you, according to eyewitnesses who were on the boat, some of the passengers on this tragic trawler had paid $4,000 to $6,000 for the passage across the Med. My question is, with this likely to continue in the summer season, what is being done by IOM to monitor the departure of these vessels from the various ports in North Africa, whether it's Tobruk or elsewhere? Also, the reports mention what you mentioned, Jeremy, that in the lower deck, what was traditionally the refrigeration system of the trawler, there were women and children who certainly perished. These smugglers, how does international treat them?
If Jeremy, let's start with you, if that's okay, then we'll go to you, Paul. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks, John. On the chain of events, I think it's, again, maybe it's great Paul's here from the IOM. Maybe he can expand a bit more on that. If I could just reinforce what the High Commissioner had said earlier, and in fact, what he had said only a few months ago when there was yet another a tragedy of not of the same scale, but similar loss of lives. And he had said at the time, experience teaches us that adopting a tougher line on curbing irregular migration will not prevent departures, but rather result in more human suffering and deaths at sea. So instead, it would be far better for countries to provide safe and regular pathways for migration and prevent unnecessary deaths. I think I'll leave it there and let Paul jump in.
Thanks, Jeremy. Paul?
Yeah, thanks very much for your question. Look, we're not in a position to confirm one way or another the dollar values that you've heard. But what we do know from years of experience is this is an incredibly lucrative illicit trade. Thousands of people are on the move, not just across the Med, but in other parts of the world. And in many cases, those irregular journeys are indeed facilitated by smugglers and traffickers along the way. This is one of the reasons why we've consistently called for concerted action to dismantle the criminal networks that are benefiting from this, that are putting a dollar value on the heads of each and every person who is attempting to improve their own lives by making these migratory journeys, who are profiting from the desperate dreams of migrants and refugees, and indeed facilitating dangerous journeys like this tragedy we are seeing unfolding in the waters off Greece this week.
Many thanks, Paul and Jeremy. Questions now from Gorgi. Go ahead, Gorgi. Gorgi, go ahead.
Thank you. One question first for the representative of the Human Rights Council. Did the High Commissioner require for an international inquiry commission for this? Secondly, for people from the Hellenic Red Cross, I would like to know if you know right now the country of origin of these migrants. Thank you.
Thanks, Gorgi. What I'll do is refer back to the statement by the High Commissioner, and in that he had underscored the need to investigate people smugglers and human traffickers and ensure they are brought to justice. So we're aware of the news reports that the Greek authorities have arrested 9 suspected people smugglers who are believed to have piloted the overcrowded fishing boat. And it's essential in a case such as this that accountability is crucial.
Thank you very much. On the country of origins, either Jesse or Dimitris?
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Regarding the origin of the people who were involved in the incident, according to the statements of the survivors or the documents they have on them, most of them are originated from Libya and Syria.
Okay, thank you very much for confirming that. Frank Jordans of the Associated Press, go ahead.
Hi, I'd like to come back to Jeremy because you very diplomatically avoided answering the question from the AFP colleague about an investigation. But you did say the questions need to be asked. So I'd like to ask you, who do these questions need to be asked of, and who should be doing the asking? Who should be asking the questions? Is it the national authorities in Greece? Is it some sort of international body?
Yes. So in the first instance, it would always start at the national level. So all the relevant states involved in one way or another in this tragedy. So that would be the obvious starting point. And then you'd take it from there. At what level? At an international level, I wouldn't be privileged to make that judgment at this stage. But it's a responsibility ultimately that should be shared between all states, the origin, transit and destination countries.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think that's it for the questions on Greece. But before we close, maybe I can just ask either Jesse or Dimitris if you had any final comments on this before we move on. No, I see that's not the case. And of course, I just remind you that the SG, of course, Secretary General Antonio Guterres expresses his deepest condolences to all those who perished in this tragedy. And he did, in response to a question yesterday, I should just point out that he said this is not a Greek problem, this is a European problem. He thinks it's time for Europe to be able to be in solidarity, to define an effective migration policy for these types of situations, not to happen again. That was uttered by the Secretary General at a press conference yesterday. Okay, then we have now exhausted Greece, so we will hear from Pascal Sim for the upcoming session of the Human Rights Council starting on Monday.
Thank you, Rolando. Good morning, everyone. The United Nations Human Rights Council kicks off its 53rd regular session on Monday, June 19 at 10 a.m. in room 20 of the Palais des Nations in Geneva. During the next 4 weeks, the Council will address more than 30 thematic human rights issues, such as women's rights, climate change, and freedom of expression and opinion. In addition, around 40 countries will be the subject of discussion during this session, including Ukraine, Myanmar, Sudan, Iran, Venezuela, Israel, and the occupied Palestinian territories. I just want to highlight that the 53rd session of the Human Rights Council will begin with a presentation of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, of his annual report. And on the first day of this 53rd session, the Human Rights Council will hold interactive dialogues on 3 country situations. The Council will first hear about the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan from the Special Rapporteur on this country, Richard Bennett, and from the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. At lunchtime at 2:10 p.m., the Special Rapporteur and the chair of this working group will give a press conference. They will provide their observations on their reports. In the afternoon, the Council will discuss the human rights situation in Sudan with a report presented by the High Commissioner and with the participation of his designated experts on the country, Redouane Wisser. And the Human Rights Council will conclude the opening day of this 53rd session with a meeting on the human rights situation in Eritrea, and we will hear from the Special Rapporteur on this country, Mohamed Babikar. So for the latest update on this 53rd session, please check our program of work on SCED. It's hrc53.sced.com. Our country situations and human rights thematic issues that the Council will address during this 53rd session are listed in the A to Z guide that I have in my hand and that you can find online on the sessions page. And I invite you to use and monitor the hashtag HRC53 on social media so that you can follow all latest news and join the broader conversation on human rights during these next 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascal. We have a question from Lisa Schlein of VOA for you.
Yeah, good morning, Pascal. Off and running again, huh? A couple of quick questions. What time does the High Commissioner give his report? And then regarding the situation on Sudan, who will be participating in that? Thank you.
Okay. So for the presentation of the High Commissioner's annual report, we expect it to start right after 10 a.m. That would be the first item to be discussed during this session. Regarding the human rights situation in Sudan, so the meeting will start at 3 p.m. As I said, we expect the High Commissioner to present his report. The designated expert, Redouane Wisser, will be here as well. The Sudanese ambassador in Geneva should be the one representing his government. I don't have the other list of speakers, but I can send it to you by email right after.
Thank you very much, Pascal. I don't see further questions for you, so wish you good luck. Thank you. Courage for the weeks to... Oh, John, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you. You're a little late on the trigger finger, so go ahead, John.
Yes, hi. Actually, my question is not for Pascal, but for someone from WHO, if they're present on the latest casualty situation in the conflict in Sudan. Thanks very much.
Okay, so thank you, Pascal, for joining us here. In fact, our next briefer is from WHO, in fact. So maybe if you don't mind holding that thought, John, we will hear from, firstly from Dr. Kwisang Teo, Technical Officer of the Department of Health Products Policy and Standards at WHO, who is presenting a new WHO report, Left Behind in Pain. It's about the unequal access to morphine for pain relief. Over to you, Doctor.
Very much. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to this Pele briefing. Today, WHO publishes a new report which describes the status of access to morphine for medical use. This report is titled Left Behind in Pain to highlight one of the main findings and sobering reality that access to morphine for medical use and strong opiates more generally is persistently lacking, particularly in low and middle income countries. This means that millions of people continue to suffer severe pain that could have been prevented if they had adequate and consistent access to morphine. Informed by data from various sources, including detailed statistics from the International Narcotics Control Board, the report finds that the global distribution of medical morphine is unequal and does not correspond to medical need. The report also presents findings from a WHO survey of stakeholders, which confirms the disparity in access between high and lower income countries and in different regions. Half of the respondents from low income countries and 1 in 5 respondents from lower middle income countries reported that nearly all, or at least 80% of people did not receive morphine or other strong opiates despite medical need. The report also explains why people do not have safe access to morphine when there is a clear medical need, how some system factors could be put in place to enable safe access, and offers areas of action to improve safe access to morphine for medical purposes. Now, pain is a major public health problem globally. One study estimated between 6 billion and 21 billion days in physical and psychological serious health-related suffering associated with the need for palliative care and pain relief. If you like, this is equivalent to a hypothetical scenario of having more than 95% of the entire population of the Netherlands or the population of South Africa suffering pain for 365 days every year. Now, leaving people behind in pain when effective medicines are available for pain management, especially in the context of end-of-life care, should be a cause of serious concern for policymakers. Morphine is an essential medicine which has been on the WHO model list of essential medicines since its very first edition in 1977. It is effective for relieving moderate to severe pain. It can provide fast relief. When internationally accepted guidelines are followed and used by trained professionals, evidence suggests that the risk of potential harm is low and clinically manageable. And importantly, morphine can be provided at relatively low cost. For all these reasons, the report calls for urgent actions from all stakeholders to improve safe access to morphine for medical use. It is not only about improving health, but also preserving human rights and dignity.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that update. And if Carla, if you can share Dr. Teiteo's notes. We have a question for you from Lisa Schlein, the Voice of America.
Yes, good morning. The question actually, it's something that I keep hearing over and over and over again. It never seems to be resolved, that I have heard from WHO experts and others who say that morphine, that health providers very often do not provide morphine to patients in great pain because of the fear of addiction and some sort of moral hesitancy, and that this exists even when people are in a terminal state in their health. Do you see this as an ongoing huge problem, and how would you overcome it if you can? It hasn't, I mean, it has persisted for so long. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So concerns about the potential harmful effects of opiates, including morphine, are valid, and such as their potential to lead to opiate use disorder, or more commonly known as addiction. For this reason, a certain amount of caution about the potential harms of opiate use, such as in chronic non-cancer pain, is good for public health insofar as it is well-informed and proportionate to risk. So such concerns should not undermine the benefits of opiate use when clinically indicated and when used safely by trained professionals. So we recognize that, as per the WHO survey as well, there are some persistent beliefs and misconceived beliefs about the potential harms that may arise. But just to give you an example, for example, people receiving morphine and other strong opiates in doses high enough to cause sedation may also experience respiratory depression. So if severe and if left untreated, respiratory depression can be fatal. But we also want to stress that when internationally accepted dosing guidelines are followed, evidence suggests that significant respiratory depression is uncommon or rare and clinically manageable. So we really want to emphasize the focus of the report is really about safe access. It's really about balancing the risks and benefits in an informed way and and proportionate to the risk. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Doctor. And I note that Carla has shared your notes, so thank you for that, Carla. Further questions for Dr. Teteo? No, I don't see that's the case. So we'll turn, I note your question for WHO on Sudan. John, we'll come back to you, but first let's hear from Claire Nullis of the World Meteorological Organization, who has an announcement on the European State of the Climate Report and WMO Roundup of Extraordinary Climate Records. Claire, over to you.
Yes, so good morning, everybody. The World Meteorological Organization on Monday will issue a regional report on the state of the climate in Europe in 2022. We're doing this in conjunction with the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service and a number of other partners. It will be released at a climate change conference in Dublin, Ireland, which will be attended by WMO Secretary General Professor Tallis and obviously a number of other officials. We've sent out the press release under embargo. I'm not aware that there is an actual press conference planned in Dublin, and we're not responsible for arrangements. But if you would like any interviews, please get in touch with me, and I can certainly facilitate this. The report is for 2022, but obviously, a lot of the extreme events with many impacts that we saw last year are continuing this year. So this afternoon, hopefully on our website, and I can show you the link when it's posted, I will post a roundup that we've compiled of some of the new reports, new climate monitoring reports that we've received in May and for early June, but just to give you a flavor of it, May was one of the warmest Mays on record for the third consecutive month. Antarctic sea ice for the month of May was at record low. Greenhouse gas concentrations at Mauna Loa, which is the benchmark station in WMO's Global Atmosphere Watch Network, have surged. And what we're seeing in June is really concerning. Already in May, global ocean surface temperatures hit a record high for the second consecutive month. What we're seeing in June is that sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic are really off the charts. Air surface temperatures in early June are also at record levels. So I will be sending out, I'm sort of busy still, finalizing it, but we'll put it on our website this afternoon ahead of the launch of the European report on Monday. And if you've got questions, please, please contact me.
Great, thanks very much, Claire. Questions now for Claire? I don't see that's the case. So thanks very much for that update, and good luck next week at the launch of that important report. John, let's go back to you for your, oh, sorry, Catherine, stay with us, Claire. I think we have a question for you, Catherine.
Oh no, ahead. It's not for Claire. Thank you, Claire. Hi.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Sorry for that.
And happy birthday, John, by the way.
Okay.
No, it was just, Rolando, it was just to kindly remind OCHA, Mr. Abbe, not to forget to send his notes on Ukraine.
D'accord. Okay,
Merci.
we will. Okay, we are, through your comment right now, we are reminding our colleagues at OCHA to do so. Thank you. John, you have a question for WHO on Sudan. Carla is still with us, so please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Carla. I was interested in the latest update on casualties in Sudan. If you have an update from your country office, thanks very much.
Hi, John. Thanks for the question. And yes, I sure do have that update for you. 2 months on, the violence in Sudan continues to make the delivery of healthcare increasingly difficult. In Khartoum, fewer than 1/5 of health facilities are fully functional. Insecurity is preventing patients and health care workers from reaching hospitals. Health facilities, assets, and staff are being attacked. Nonetheless, Sudanese health workers are showing enormous courage and resourcefulness to respond to the growing needs. And of course, WHO is there to help them. Here are your key facts and figures at a glance. Casualties as of the 14th of June, 2023. Please note these figures are from the Federal Ministry of Health and are not independently verified by WHO. Overall injuries, 11,704. Deaths, 1,073. Khartoum State, injuries, 3,508. Deaths, 230. 24.7 million people need humanitarian aid. 18.1 million people have been targeted for humanitarian aid as per the revised humanitarian response plan, which was launched in May 2023. 4 million children and pregnant and breastfeeding women are acutely malnourished. More than 100,000 under 5 children with severe acute malnutrition with medical complications are in need of specialized care at stabilization centers. And I'll just give you a little bit on displaced people. So some 3.7 million people were already internally displaced prior to the conflict, mostly in Darfur. Nearly 2.2 million people have been newly displaced due to the conflict, over 1.6 internally, and more than 528,000 have crossed the border into neighboring countries as refugees, asylum seekers, and returnees. That is what I have for you on the latest casualties, deaths, etc.
Thanks very much, Carla, and I'm sure that you'll be sharing those figures. Lots of numbers, they're important numbers indeed. John, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I did actually. Carla, thanks very much for the update. With regards to the more than 100,000 children under 5 that need stabilization care for suffering from severe acute malnutrition, how many of these children are being reached at the moment of the 100,000 more, and how many are not? And what is the risk that they'll perish unless they're reached very soon? Perhaps if there's a colleague there from UNICEF, because I think that's an area they specialize in if they're there as well.
Along with other humanitarian agencies, John, WHO is working intensively to continue to distribute life-saving medical supplies. We've sent a total of 170 metric tons of medical supplies worth $1.6 million US, including for trauma and injuries, chronic diseases, and infectious diseases, using all possible means of transportation, air, land, and sea. These supplies are crucial to addressing the urgent healthcare needs of the affected population, including the under 5s, and supporting the efforts of healthcare providers and organizations in Sudan. But limited access and insecurity do continue to hamper our efforts to save lives.
Thanks very much, Carla. And I don't think James from UNICEF was online earlier, but perhaps if you can liaise directly with him for any further questions. I don't see any further hands. There was a hand up, but it disappeared. So I think we are clear. Yes, okay. I just have a few very brief announcements before we wrap up our briefing today. Just consistent with what Claire was speaking to earlier about climate change, I just wanted to draw your attention to the statement we shared with you last night from the Secretary General Antonio Guterres following his meeting with a group of civil society climate leaders from around the world yesterday in New York. In his statement, he called for the immediate global action towards net zero emissions, which, he says, must start with the polluted heart of the climate crisis, the fossil fuel industry. We are hurtling towards disaster, eyes wide open, he said. It's time to wake up and step up. That's a statement that we shared with you yesterday. In terms of meetings here, you heard extensively from my colleague Pascal on the Human Rights Council session. We don't have other treaty body meetings next week. There is a meeting in New York I wanted to flag to you. We did share with you in media advisory pertaining to Haiti. There's a special event on Haiti taking place at UN headquarters later today, specifically at 4 p.m. our time. And this is titled Saving Lives, Addressing the Food Security Needs of Haiti. This is webcast live. We'll feature the heads of UNICEF, Catherine Russell and Cindy McCain of the World Food Program, and several other speakers. Also, press conferences very quickly. We have the one that Pascal mentioned on Monday in this room at 2 p.m. We have a press conference to launch a joint report on the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. That's Mr. Richard Bennett, the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, together with Dorothy Estrada Tank, who is the chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. That's here at 2 p.m. on Monday. Tuesday at 9:30, before this regular press briefing, we'll connect with Achim Steiner, the UN Development Program Administrator, who is currently in Ukraine. You received through UNDP media advisory pertaining to the 3-day mission of Mr. Steiner in Ukraine. He will be speaking to you here at 9:30 on Tuesday to provide a Ukraine backgrounder ahead of the International Donors Conference taking place in London on the 21st and 22nd of June. That is Wednesday and Thursday next week. So this is the so-called Ukraine Recovery Conference. Another press conference you heard from Abigail about the press conference from UNMAS on the 21st, Wednesday. Prior to that, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. On Tuesday afternoon, I should say, that Tuesday afternoon, the 20th of June at 1 p.m., the Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and in Israel, will be here on the launch of the Commission's latest report. Navi Pillay, chairperson, Milun Kotari, a member of the Commission, and Chris Sidoti, member of the Commission, will all be here to brief you on that report. And lastly, Thursday next, the 22nd of June, we have a press conference at 1:30 in this room. It's with the Special Rapporteur on the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of physical and mental health. This is Tlaleng Mofokeng, sorry. This is to launch the rapporteur's report focusing on digital innovation, technologies, and the right to health. We have shared these advisors with you. On that note, very last note, just to say that today is International Day of Family Remittances, and there are several other observances coming up. Too lengthy to mention here, but just noting today is International Day of Family Remittances, with over 50% of remittances are sent to households in rural areas, where 75% of the world's poor and food insecure live. A little fact for you. That's it for me. I see a couple of hands popped up. Lisa.
Thanks. Yeah, I got distracted. So I lowered my hand before, but it's up again. This is for Carla. A couple of quick things. First of all, I noticed you put your notes into the chat box. Could you send them by email? Because it's really tough to access it on the chat.
Sure, I'll do that for you, Lisa. Yeah, for everyone.
Thanks, appreciate that. Then I'd like to know whether you talk about the need for stabilizing care for malnourished children. Is that synonymous with providing these children with life-saving nutritional treatment? And would you say that these children, if they do not get this treatment, that they are at risk of death?
Thanks for that question. So I would say to that, Lisa, that the risk of worsening malnutrition is imminent with the prevailing inability to access or afford local markets, as well as a pause in WFP operations. Approximately 1/3 was already facing hunger before the fighting, and an estimated 50,000 severely, acutely malnourished children need ongoing, round-the-clock care. I don't have details on sort of parsing the differences between stabilizing and life-saving, but I would say that stabilizing is certainly a step in the right direction towards life-saving. I could also add that child psychological well-being is in a critical situation.
Okay, thank you very much, Carla. Gorgi, did you have, oh, sorry, before we go to you, Gorgi, Lisa, did you have a follow-up for Carla?
Yeah, just a very quick thing, Carla.
Go ahead.
But would you say that many of these children, if they do not get this care that they seemingly desperately need, that they are at risk of dying?
WHO is very worried about these children, and we're doing everything we can to help them and to prevent them from dying. Peace is the ultimate solution. We need access.
Indeed, peace is the ultimate solution. Sustainable peace. Okay, Gorgi, over to you. You have a question for me or for somebody else?
And for you and for the representative of the Human Rights Council, coming back to the statement they made last Tuesday regarding Senegal, did you receive any response from the government? Thank you.
Merci, Gorgi. I'll relay your message to our colleagues at OHCHR. They are not currently connected, but I will certainly, or maybe you could contact Ravina directly with that question. Merci beaucoup. On this note, I like to wish you a nice lunch and bon weekend.